Welcome back to the Leeds Rhinos Podcast. It's a Thursday, which means it's our Q&A edition, and we've got a very, very, very special guest to join us on this edition ahead of the Betfred Super League playoff game this Saturday night at AMT Headingley against St Helens. We're delighted to be joined by our head coach, Brad Arthur. We'll be hearing lots from Brad soon. We've got your questions you've sent in. We're putting those to Brad. Great to have you on board and join us on this podcast. We cannot wait for Saturday night. Make sure you've got your ticket. Midnight on Friday. If you're a member, you can get that £5 discount if you book before midnight on Friday. Tickets.therhinos.co.uk. We cannot wait to have you down. It's going to be a special night. Saints are travelling in big numbers. It's going to be a fantastic atmosphere here. Don't miss out. Whilst it's great to watch the game on Sky Sports, the boys need you down here at the stadium to cheer them on, to lift them in the biggest game of the year as we look to continue on the road to Old Trafford. Thanks for joining us on the podcast. Remember to subscribe wherever you get your podcast to stay in touch with all things like Leeds Rhinos. Push that notification button to make sure you get told as soon as new content drop. There's a knock-on effect, new edition coming out with Jared and Tom in the chair. You don't want to miss out on that one. And of course, we'll be back on Monday with our match review, hopefully looking back on a successful result against St Helens and looking forward to the grand final, semi-final clash next week. So join us on Monday for that. Brad, thanks for joining us, first of all. As you can imagine, lots of questions from the fans here. Before we get on to the questions, looking forward to Saturday night, a massive home occasion here.
Yeah, it's very exciting. The boys have worked really hard throughout 27 rounds to get to this stage, and that was the one common goal from everyone in the club. We wanted to try and get a home final, reward our very vocal and loyal support that we get here, and like you said, if we can get as many people here as possible to cheer us on, that extra energy that they give the team goes a long way. It's like, I've said it, it's like when the boys score a try, they find that extra bit of energy, but the crowd here provides that energy, which sometimes the team needs.
Yeah, and St Helens, we've had some real tussle with them this year. You expecting something similar on Saturday night?
Yeah, it'll be tough. It'll be physical, brutal at times, and the team that can be on top of their execution and really ice their moments, because there's going to be some big moments in the game, and there'll be some opportunities, but the team that can ice their moments and opportunities will be the team that comes out on top.
And importantly, we've got some bodies coming back in as well that'll be crucial for get us back to how we've been performing this year.
Yeah, and you could see just the quality of training picked up again today, just in particular that left edge, just a bit of class there. So that'll certainly help. But like I said, I think it's going to be really physical, and we're going to have to get on top in that area to start with.
Brilliant stuff. We can't wait. Make sure you're there, guys, to come down and support Brad and the boys. We'll get right into the question, because as you can imagine, it's a bumper mailbag we've had with the head coach in the hot seat. We'll start with some general questions just about your sort of impressions of the competition since you've been over there. Sean Fisher on Facebook writes, in Australia Super League, we get the impression it's sometimes looked down on as a whole. Have you been surprised by the quality of Super League? And on the other hand, what things do you think we could improve over here?
Yeah, and I was one of those guys, that probably didn't give it enough credit, and I just suppose getting your own little bubble in Australia. And but it wasn't until I got here and got a real appreciation of the game. There's some differences in the game. It's probably not as fast as the NRL, but then I think physically, there's nowhere to hide, because sometimes the rucks are a bit slow, so like the line's ready, the 10 metres is a bit tighter, and the defence is on top of you pretty quickly, so it's quite physical. Areas that we can improve in my eyes would be the ruck, the play the ball area, try and speed it up a little bit. Often teams work really hard to try and find their front or get a quick play of the ball, and then it can be nullified just by some extra movements in the ruck, moving guys east, west, sideways, to slow it down. So I feel like, the improvement can be just a bit more free-flowing at times in that play the ball area.
Yeah, that answers a question Duncan Crossland asked about the ruck speed as well, because I know that's something you've spoken about. Simon Hickley in Facebook asked, do you think that the try-no-try decision given to the video ref should be scrapped and simply just left to the video ref to decide? It's something that there's been a lot of talk about this year.
No, I like the referees having to make a decision, or, the fact that they've got to back themselves, and often, they get a view, sometimes you don't get all the right TV angles. So I think relying on the refs to make a call, and then you got to have sufficient evidence to overturn their call. I don't mind it, as long as we get, if we're going to overturn a decision, it has to be 100% right. And I think that's where maybe there's been a few errors throughout the season where they've overturned the referee's decision and it's been wrong.
Yeah, and it's great to hear you say that, because I know it's something that I've seen you talk about. There's never an excuse from a referee decision. You never blamed a result on a referee. And I think if you've watched this week's Behind the Game from the game over at Wigan, Tom Orroyd, you asked him about the play the ball in the first half, and immediately said to him, "But that's I don't care what the decision for."
Yeah.
We then had to defend that set. Sort of your attitude around referees is they're just part of the game, and you need to get on with the match.
Yeah, and players go through games all season making errors. Me as a coach, I make errors, so like they're human and they're under a lot of pressure, and there's one of them in the middle of the field, and they're going to get a few things wrong, but it's our attitude to it and what we can do about it. And instead of playing the victim, well, we've got to have a positive response. And that error in particular talking about, Tom done everything we've asked him to do. He played the ball correctly. He'd been penalised for doing the opposite at the start of the season, but to his credit, we just got on with it, and his teammates defended the error for him, and that's all you can do.
Absolutely. Marcello answered you might have sort of summed this up when you mentioned about ruck speed. If you could change one rule in the game, what would it be? Is there anything that is particular bugbear of yours?
The advantage rule, so at what stage is the advantage taken? From when there's an error made and then a team plays on, and what stage when they make an error in that play is the advantage taken. So I'd like to just see that's like a free play. You just have so it would suit us, and I'm sure it's a lot more entertaining if teams can on the back of that error, just that's a free play, and if regardless of whether you took the advantage or not or how far down the field you got with it. If you made an error at the end of it, well, you get to come back and start over again. It'd make for a lot of excitement, and the fans would really enjoy that, I think.
Yeah, you'd almost, as soon as an error was made, everyone would be up going.
Yeah, just go after it and try and score straight up.
Yeah, great stuff. Well, so see if they implement that one. Moving on to the team and what you've seen from the team. Martin Priestley asked on Facebook, coming into Leeds, how bad did you view the situation? I suppose what was your impression when you originally spoke to Ian Blease about coming over? What was your impression of what you were going to come into?
Well, my impression was a lot of positives around, how the club was run and, where the expectations of what the club wanted from the team and where it needed to be. So that really impressed me, that the club was a club of high standards and wanted to achieve. So that was a real draw for me. But in terms of the actual team and the playing group, because I didn't know a lot about the competition and, had my head in the sand over in Australia. I just wanted to come here with a clean slate and not have any prejudgment on how the team played or how individuals played, and give everyone an opportunity to start fresh and clean slate and only judge them on, what actions, they put in front of me. So I felt like that was the best approach, and it was a good approach and an approach the boys wanted to, that they didn't have to carry any baggage as a team or as an individual, and just hear my version of what their standards and expectations needed to be based on a few bit of feedback from the club and the team. And that's how we've probably moved forward at a reasonable rate, I reckon.
Yeah, and that leads us into a question from Martin Dickinson, also on Facebook, asked about things that needed to be fixed up. Obviously, you've taken over the team in a tough position, but I know you've spoke this year about actually what Rowan had done with the team, and what's happened this year is built on some of those foundations.
Done a lot of good things around their attack and their the freedom that he gave them to play, and they've got a real mindset of going after every play, and I've just had to try and mould that into how it suits the style I want us to play. But I've tried to give them that freedom and keep that. And with that sometimes comes some errors, but I'm happy to have errors in the team if we're going after things and we're playing footy. As long as sometimes we get in the habit of chasing the scoreboard or coming up with forced plays that aren't there. But we focused a lot on removing some detailed errors and penalties. There's errors and penalties that you're going to be happy to give away if you're in control of the situation. But then there's errors and penalties that just come through lack of concentration, which we've worked really hard to improve. And that was one of the areas that we needed to focus on. And then defensively, just, I'm not worried about how it was done in the past, but just my style of defence. I like, I coach around time and space and just like us to take as much time and space off the opposition. It's a lot harder to execute things with the ball when you're under time restraints and under pressure from the opposition. If everything's on your terms, well, your accuracy and your skill is a lot easier to execute under less pressure. So defensively, just like to put the opposition under pressure and get in their face and go after them.
Yeah, and that really lends itself when we've had Jamie Langley or Chev or Grixie on here on a Monday for the match review. They've talked about, particularly our discipline, but those effort areas. So that, presumably that's what you're talking about in terms of, making sure that they're onside, but then that effort area to get up and take that space.
We talk a lot about it. A lot of teams and clubs do just about it, front loading our effort and, putting in the effort in the detail and the areas that we need to, in particular line speed and retreat speed. And if you can get all that right early, it stops a lot of reactionary effort. And reactionary effort, just comes naturally, but it's a lot harder to do, and you use a lot more energy. So if you can front load it and do the things that are important to the team early, you'll save a bit of petrol, for your attack.
Yeah, absolutely. Danny Leeds 1919 writes on Instagram, which Leeds player have impressed you the most?
That's a really hard question because every single one of them has made some improvements and done things that have really impressed me along the way, whether it be with their training attitude, the type of people they are, some stuff they've done on the field. But, in particular, there's a couple of guys, I think, like Ash Hanley, just with his leadership. And sometimes you take for granted how people play or what they can bring to the team, and you take it for granted, and you don't really realise it until it's missing. Like an Ash missed, those 3 or 4 games, and just his leadership was probably he'd come a long way from where he was when I first got here, but probably didn't realise how much he'd improved in that area. Yeah. We've just seen it today or this week with him back at training. And then there's a real respect level from his players and his teammates around his leadership. Harry Newman, just with his composure, he was always in the face of the referee and, played the victim role a bit at times, looking for excuses, but he's been really good and he's been rewarded with 27 games. He played every game and hasn't missed hardly any at training at all. So, there's been some big improvements there. And then just a lot of our forwards, like the effort that they've put into their game, both physically and they've been able to play big minutes, has been pretty impressive too.
Yeah, and one name as well there, Jake Connor. You spoke recently when he won the Rob Burrow Player of the Year award about in pre-season you were looking at him and wondering where he was going to fit into the side, but obviously he's won our Player of the Year. He's in the final 3 for the Man of Steel as well. That's been announced. He's someone who's really flourished this year, hasn't he?
Yeah, and he's worked hard, and the group have got a lot of credit to take for that, just because of the environment they've put him in and the demands they had on him about working hard, because we knew how talented he was. But it's no good if he can only do it for 5 or 10 minutes in a game, and there's no good if he can't do it when he's tired, and it's no good to us if he can't do it under pressure. It's no good if he can't do it in the 70th minute when we need a big play or we need him taking control of the team. And that's been the improvement. He's been able to maintain and sustain his skill level and his class for longer periods and under pressure, because that's when you're under pressure and you're under a bit of fatigue, that's when you need your class players to stand up, and we needed him to be able to do it for 80 minutes. So that's a credit to Jake how hard he's worked.
Yeah, and next one's a couple of questions around the guys who are coming through. Ricky on Instagram and Matt Horton on Instagram as well, asking about sort of the work that Chev's done in terms of that transition role, our reserves, our academies. Who do you see? Prez Casella's obviously made a big impact. Are there others on next on the rank ready to come through, do you think?
Yeah, Chev's done a great job, and it's something I talked to Bleasy about in the pre-season of having that role, and I thought it was missing, like that link between, the guys developing into the first team. And often when, you pick your team each week to play Super League, then the other guys got sort of left to their own devices. You're like a coach of those guys. And, Chev is actually the coach of opposition team that will, for training as well. And it just helps with their development because they're getting to practice different things. Sometimes they might have to defend a different system to what we've practiced, so that it just broadens their skill and knowledge of the game as well. But Chev's done a really good job with those young guys, and the exposure we've been able to give them at training has helped with their development. And, young Brandy, he showed that he's a bit of a talent and he's really good with the ball, but I've liked how he's willing to get down and dirty physically, and he gets in there and he plays nice and tough. And so, he's my style of a half. We haven't seen hardly any footy from at all, or no footy this year, but like Fergus does some really good things. He's just getting on top of his body physically. Max Simpson got a couple of opportunities and really stood up. Presley, played against Hull KR, starting front row, and done a tremendous job for us. So, and then there's a few of the outside backs that have got a bit of pace there. So there's plenty to work with, and like the 18s are in the grand final this week. The reserves won, so there's plenty of depth.
Yeah, anyone who watched the reserves grand final, big hit from Brownie in that one. He wasn't shirking, I think, any of the work there from in the halves. Which brings us neatly onto that squad. We talked about those players coming through. Obviously, recruitment is an ongoing process. I know you work very closely with Ian Blease. Just in broader terms, how does that work in terms of yourself and Ian? Do you both identify players? Does he bring players to you? Do you bring players to him? How's it work?
Yeah, we both. Like sometimes he'll bring players, I'll bring players, but we have a plan. It's not just ad hoc. We've got coverage in certain positions, and then other positions we might feel like we're a little bit light on, or guys are, get into the back end of their career. So how do we replace them underneath? So it's not just about what happens now and what team we can put on the field now or next year. It's about in 3 years' time, what does it look like? So you got to, you'll get often managers trying to, pushing players to you, which is great. And so they help you with that part of it, but you've got to target recruit too, for what positions you need. There's no good just, if we've got Lockie Miller here and we think that he's got a good couple of years in him, there's no good buying going and chasing another fullback. We're better off looking at what's underneath and the kids and developing them. So we both work hand in hand with that. At the end of the day, Bleasy's got to manage the salary cap, and you can only fit so many in, and as a typical coach, I just want, and he's got to try and make sure we fit it all in the budget and the cap.
Yeah, and the cap, one of the reasons why Sam's obviously left was the cap side of things. We're losing Gano, he's going over to the NRL. But I'm speaking to Blease is important. We look at the cap as a whole. We brought in Callum, which obviously was a bonus mid-season, but he's got to go into next year's cap. Mike Asiva hopefully back in the year as well.
Yeah, and then you get your guys that you can sometimes get late in the season, or bring them in, or even some young guys develop and they become your cap savers. Where you might have to go a little bit light on in the cap in this position because you're a bit top heavy elsewhere. So you need those guys. It is a balancing act, and it's not just about, like I said, what happens now. It's projecting what it looks like next year and in a couple of years' time. And things chop and change with it all the time. So it's always it's always changing from year to year, week to week, the cap.
Yeah, and obviously you've got great connections back in Australia. In terms of Leeds as a club, is it a club that managers and players are keen to come to now?
Yeah, well, I feel like it's a destination club. Like when I was back in Australia, took every person or manager and player talked about 3 or 4 clubs that they'd like to send their players to, and Leeds was always one of them.
Yeah, fantastic stuff. Looking back on your career so far, Charlie on X says, what's been the highlight of your career to date?
Obviously, reaching a NRL grand final is a pretty big high for me. But I've developed a lot of friendships along the way throughout that time, and seen a lot of young men grow up and become fathers. That's pretty important to me, having an impact on their lives that way. So I reckon, at the end of the day, we all want to win competitions, but, I get a bit of a kick out of helping blokes just reach their full potential or become better people or become better men. And, especially guys that have got young families and, becoming young family blokes.
Yeah, it is noticeable at games, particularly those para lads who you were there for so long that you obviously introduced them as teenagers, some of them into first grade rugby, and then came through. We've actually got a question. Someone asked, John Hodgson asked, do you regret not keeping Bevan French at para? You were chatting to him last week. I mean, he's done incredibly well since he's come over. He has,
and you know what? It's worked out better for Bev. And like the good thing about it is, every time I go out to see him, he's so happy to see me. I'm so happy to see him, and it's, it just got to a stage where the game was at in the NRL. At that stage, it was really slow, and the wrestle was really heavy, and it just sort of nullified Bev's game there for 12 months. And it was probably better for him to come over here, get a different opportunity, and have a look at it. Like he's unbelievable, isn't he? Like he's the best player in the competition easily.
Yeah. If you put your neutral hat on it, the fact what we've been able to see him do over the last few years has been a real benefit to Super League.
Yeah, and you know what? Like he understood, and probably didn't understood until he actually left that it was actually better for him. And then when he came back, like 12, 18 months later, we caught up and he had that conversation with me. He was a bit dirty when he first left, but he gets and he appreciated, my honesty around it and what was better for him moving forward. He was part of, he coming out of beer with the boys on grand final, after we got beaten in the grand final. And so like guys like him is why you do it. But what I could say right now, like if he wanted to go back to the NRL, the game would suit him right now, the way, how fast it is. Yeah, it'd really suit him. But he's obviously very happy here.
Yeah. And then Grayson Webster, obviously we've got a huge game this Saturday night, but you mentioned about getting to a grand final with Parramatta. Grayson asks, what would it mean to win a grand final with Leeds? Have you even dared think about that?
I haven't thought about it, but in the back of my head, it's there. Like I'd love to be able to do it. And like there's individual reasons why I'd love to do it, but just for the club, because I can see how important it is to the club, our fans. I can see how important it is to the players, and I've seen the buy-in from the players. Like I was a stranger coming in, and like they just. Whatever I said and asked them to do, they just went about their business and did without any, questions asked. So that's, they've worked really hard. I still feel like this group can evolve and get better with another pre-season, and their best footy's still ahead of them as a team, but there's no reason whatsoever why we can't win it this year. We're going to have to be very good for 3 games for 80 minutes. So we've proven, on 2 occasions this year, we've won 5 in a row. We've won back-to-back 3 games in a row on plenty of occasions this year. So, but we're going to be up against some good opposition, and there's no reason why we can't. But there's no reason why I think all 6 teams can't make a case for winning it. It's just whoever can get it right for 80 minutes 3 times.
Yeah, it's going to be a massive month ahead for the game. We can't wait for that. That's some of the serious stuff. We've got some lighter questions for you now. And you seem to make a name for yourself in the city centre. You've been living in the city centre, and you like going out and seeing what the city has to offer. Someone asked, "What's your favourite thing about living in Leeds?" That's from Carl Ryan.
I like that. I can go out and have a beer, and we can get on the public transport, get on the train, and I get like in the fishbowl in Australia with the NRL, like it's probably a bit more well known over there. So I like the fact that I can sort of just blend in with everyone over here. Yeah, I enjoy that, and all the pubs. The pubs are really traditional. I enjoy that too.
Just a couple of an afternoon. Yeah, we're not saying you're out in the session.
Yeah.
And you caused quite a bit of a stir. The Moot Hall pub, the big Leeds United pub in town, they took a picture one Sunday afternoon.
I just went in to watch the soccer, and I want to have a quick photo.
Brilliant. And I think people love it because it shows how much you enjoy it. We've had loads of questions about what your favourite places to eat in Leeds, or what food you've discovered. I didn't know you were a big connoisseur of food, but loads of questions about it.
Yeah, right. No, well, I'm not, but I just, wherever the 2 girls take me, I just go. I just got to go and pay, and we just whatever we. But we've eaten at a few pubs, a few Indian places. We've tried a lot of different places actually.
Very good. And you've done a lot of travelling as well, haven't you?
Yep. So that was something else that I've got out of it as well. I'm grateful for it and been very fortunate that we've been able to do a bit of travel through Europe, and it's probably not. A couple of years ago, someone said, travelling through Europe, it never really excited me. But now, I've really enjoyed it.
Fantastic.
Some nice places.
And then Kay Pearson asked on Instagram, what do you love most about the Rhinos fan base?
How loud and passionate they are. Yeah, and they really get behind you on a game, and it can change momentum. It can swing the momentum our way. It can give energy, when we need it. And I really enjoyed the amount of fans that we got to the Castleford game. That was something I hadn't experienced before. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, hopefully we've got another big away game to come in the next couple of weeks, where we want a big travelling army of fans across there. A couple of last ones there. Andy G, I've been able to do this. He obviously doesn't have access to Google, but I was able to find the answer to this one. Have you ever coached against one of your kids before, and are you looking forward to next season? Well, you did coach against your son when you were at Parrow, and he was playing at Manly back in 2023. And I don't know if this is an omen for next year against Hull. You took the winning pay that day.
Yeah, well, hopefully it stays the same. It was only I've never coached against Matthew, but coached. It was just the one occasion I think against Jake. Yeah. It was weird, but I don't know how I'm going to go next year with that, actually. I hadn't thought of it.
I'm sure the lads with the preview for that week, they'll all come in to hear what you've got to say on that one. Is there one past Rhinos player you would love to have coached, and why?
The two that we've got in the team now are pretty good. Don't want to embarrass because his son plays in the side, but Sinfield, he's my style of player. Pretty tough, uncompromising, and had a fair bit of skill about him.
And of course, you were part of that Melbourne coaching team that beat Leeds in a World Club, so you did get to see that team close up in a game as well.
Yep.
And then, who's the best player you've ever worked with? That's from Nathan on Instagram.
The best player. Oh man, how do I answer that question? I've worked and coached a lot of good players. I've worked with Mitchell Moses, Clint Gutherson, Kieran Foran, Daly Cherry Evans. So been very fortunate. Even back in my days at the Storm, we had Cameron Smith, Billy Slater, Greg Inglis, so a lot of good players. And I'm sure I learned a lot more off them than they learn off me.
Very good. And then just finally, the ongoing theme with the fans earlier in the season, about during press conferences they would get frustrated about you constantly being asked about your future. Yeah. And George on Instagram asked, "How did you find that frustrated? How did you deal with it? And what did it have any bearing on your decision to say?"
No, look, I felt like I was honest the whole way through. My reasoning's never ever changed, and I was happy for everyone to know that and understand that, because I didn't want anyone to think I was taking the club for a ride on how long, it was taking. And like what I've learned is that the journos have got a job to do, and like same as me. So I've just got to appreciate it and embrace it and answer their questions. And I feel like if you just be honest and answer the question, at some stage, they can only ask it so many times. So if you keep trying to avoid it, it'll just keep popping up, and they'll get twisted and turned, and you'll end up with an answer or something will be written that you didn't actually say. So I'd rather, if they're going to write something, I'd rather it come out of my mouth.
Fantastic stuff. And on that's a great note to finish up. You've answered all the fans' questions honestly as well. And it's been great to have you on the Q&A edition. Don't forget, make sure you're there Saturday night against St Helens here at AMT Headingley. Tickets are on sale now. Tickets.therhinos.co.uk. If you're a member, book before midnight on Friday and you'll get £5 off. So the great bargain there for all members to get down there. Tell your friends, tell your work colleagues, tell everyone. Let's pack out AMT Headingley for the boys on Saturday night. It's our first home playoff game since 2017 when we beat Hull FC to get to the grand final. So it's been a long time waiting to get there. Let's make the most of it. Let's pack it out. Saints will be travelling in big numbers, so we need to have those Leeds fans there to cheer the boys on. Make sure you're there. Thanks for joining us on the podcast. Remember, we're back on Monday with our match review. Remember to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and do give us a 5-star review. It helps us climb those podcast podcast charts and spread the word about Leeds Rhinos and all things rugby league. Just to say a big thanks for Brad for joining us. If you're going to the game on Saturday, have a great night. Be loud, be proud, get behind the boys, and it's going to be a special night at AMT Headingley. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.